Good day. My name is Emmanuel Abel, and I'll be speaking on groundwater and its significance in developing countries, particularly in Nigeria, which is one of the largest countries in West Africa. So we're going to look at what groundwater is, why the availability of water is in question, why groundwater is so important. We're going to speak of occurrence, porosity, types of porosity. We'll speak on permeability, aquifer, the different types of aquifer, the relationship between the geology of an area and its water system, water supply issues in Africa, and what the problems associated with groundwater are. Now, water is a precious natural resource. It is one which we cannot do without. I mean, the very fact that the body of an adult male is composed of about 60% water should tell you how important it is to our survival. So water is crucial to survival. It is very important. It's one of the key elements required for life to thrive and evolve on any planet. Now, what is groundwater? When we use the term groundwater, in most cases, we are referring to water underground. But in hydrogeology specifically, the term groundwater is used for water below the water table. So this is the water table, and then you have water below this water table, and referred to as groundwater. Now, of course, we still have water here, but here we have what we call the vadose zone, or the zone of aeration. You still have water in between soil, they're clinging onto the soil through surface tension, but they are not of any economic significance. You can't exactly get significant quantity of water for use from there. So when we're talking about groundwater, we refer to water below the water table. Now, why is the availability of water in question, right? I mean, you might ask that question, why is the availability of water in question when the Earth has so much water that it is dubbed the ocean planet? I mean, looking at this map, you can see that the majority of the surface of the Earth is covered by water. About 70% actually is covered by water. Now, the question really isn't about the availability of water. It is about the availability of fresh water. Now, most of this water that we have on the planet here is ocean water. As you can see, this is the Atlantic Ocean, this is the Pacific Ocean, the Indian Ocean right here, Arctic, Southern Ocean. So most of this water is saline water, meaning it contains salt, and this salt water isn't exactly good for your health. When you consume enough of this, it could actually cause kidney failure, cause a few other organ damage, and it's in worst cases, it might actually lead to death. So you can consume this water directly, you can use it for domestic use. And then you might ask that, with all the advances in technology, surely there's a workaround, there's a way we convert this saline water to fresh water, and there is, but that actually defeats the purpose. What we're looking for is accessible, available, cheap, fresh water for the population. And then going through the process of desalination to convert this salt water to fresh water actually makes the whole process expensive. And that defeats the purpose in the first place. So let's look at the distribution of water on the surface of the Earth. As you can see, about 97.5% of all the water on Earth is actually salt water. And that actually makes sense considering how massive these oceans are. They cover, majority of the surface of the Earth. So 97.5% is salt water, leaving us with about 2.5% fresh water. Now, that 2.5% of fresh water is actually divided into about 79% ice caps and glaciers. So about 79% of total fresh water we have on Earth is actually locked in these ice caps and glaciers. And I say locked because we can't easily access this water. It's water in the Arctic, in Greenland, in Antarctica. So these waters are actually locked there. And in order for us to access, say, water in Antarctica, for example, you have to get a vessel there, break these large slabs of ice into blocks and then convey them on ships. And that actually makes the whole process very complicated and expensive. So they are inaccessible. And then leaving us with about 20% groundwater. Well, there's 1% here, and this 1% refers to water in lakes, water in soil, water in streams. So all the surface freshwater sources actually fall into this 1%. Now, this shows us that, majority of the accessible freshwater we have on Earth is actually the groundwater. So groundwater is, the most important source of freshwater actually available to man. Now, looking at the distribution of these different water sources on different continents. When you come here, you see Antarctica, it holds quite a large reservoir of water, but in glaciers and permanent ice caps, you can't really access that. When you come to Africa, where you have most developing countries, you see about 0.2 cubic kilometers of glacier and ice caps. We don't really have that here, considering where we are situated. In terms of wetlands, large lakes, reservoir, and rivers, you can see that Africa has about 31,776 cubic kilometers of water. So your Nile, Niger, Benue River, all the surface rivers we have in Africa actually falls into this 31,776 cubic kilometers of water, which isn't much when compared to the 5.5 million cubic kilometers of groundwater we have in Africa, which is second only to Asia with about 7.8 million cubic kilometers. So when you look at it, you see that the majority of our water reserve is in groundwater. Now, you might wonder why, a large population, a large number of people in Africa don't have access to clean, potable water when we have the second largest reservoir of groundwater in the world. We'll see that as we progress. So why is groundwater so important? Now, as I said earlier, groundwater is the most crucial source of fresh water, because it actually holds the larger percentage of available fresh water. Now let's look at some of the qualities that makes it or gives it an edge over other freshwater sources. Good natural quality. In most cases, you have this water dissolving some elements from the surrounding rocks, which is actually enriching its availability. It is available, closest to point of need. It is right there. I have a borehole right behind me here. So when the problem of water came up, we just sunk the borehole, and then that gives us that gives us access to water. So low susceptibility to contamination. Groundwater is actually protected from contamination. I mean, it's not completely shadowed, but compared to surface waters like rivers and lakes, compared to the River Niger, which is also quite close to me here, it's just across the road. So compared to that, groundwater actually has degree of protection to surface contamination. Then you have low cost of development. I mean, if you are looking to harness or you are looking to get water from rivers, you have to consider setting up different facilities. You have to run pipes for kilometers to actually disseminate this water or transport this water to the various houses, and that is actually high. The cost of implementing that is quite high. But in the case of groundwater here, all we had to do was, you drill the borehole, you case it, you put your pump, you run your pipe into your room, and you have access to water. So low cost of development. If you are strong enough financially, you can actually do that yourself, and you don't have to wait for the government. And there's also resilience to climatic conditions. As I was saying, this water is shadowed, so definitely you're not expecting it to evaporate, or you're not expecting it to react to any other climatic condition. Now, occurrence of groundwater. The occurrence of groundwater within the Earth's crust is determined by these factors. We have the local lithology of the area in question. And the lithology of the area in question actually plays a crucial role in the occurrence of groundwater. And if you are in the basement complex terrain, like I am, I'm currently in the southwestern basement complex region of Nigeria, looking for groundwater in these areas, you'll be looking for fractures, cracks, joints, because you're definitely not going to find water in the pore spaces of granite or other basement rocks. So what we look for in this area is fractures. But if you're in sedimentary basins, you're in the Niger Delta, the Bida Basin, you are in the Anambra Basin, and all the other basins in the sedimentary basins of Nigeria, then you can actually get water from the pore spaces of porous and permeable lithophyses. So the lithology of the area in question actually plays a crucial part in the occurrence of groundwater. Then we have regional geological structures. This is where your fractures come in due to tectonic activities, also plays an important role in the occurrence of groundwater. We also have the geomorphology of landforms. The water table actually mimics the let's say the topography of the surface. So where you have hills, you have the water table going up, and valleys actually comes down. So the geomorphology of the landforms, the surface actually affects the characteristics and the occurrence of the water on the ground. And we also have availability of recharge sources. Now, this is actually very crucial because this groundwater isn't, an infinite supply of water. The water actually can finish, when you are taking out more than the recharge capacity. When you're taking out more than is going into the aquifer, you could actually finish this groundwater. So the availability of recharge sources is also very crucial for the occurrence of groundwater. Now, let's look at porosity. This is one of the characteristics of the lithology that actually contributes to the occurrence of groundwater. Porosity refers to the spaces between the soil particles or the rock minerals, the spaces in between, those void spaces or interstices. Those are the porosity. Now, porosity is controlled by shape and arrangement of constituent grains. The degree of sorting definitely is going to affect porosity. If it's well sorted, if it isn't, the compaction, in more compacted materials, definitely you expect to have less porosity because these materials are packed together, so you have less space in between them. Cementation, when you have this cement in between the main particles of the rock, this cement actually bonding these particles together actually reduces the porosity. Fracturing increases porosity. As you have fractures, you have more spaces in between the rocks, and definitely increasing porosity. Now, solutional weathering, I think you see this mostly in limestone and a few other rocks where you have water actually weathering rock material. This brings about what we call unit porosity, the porosity of a particular unit in the rock, not the entire rock, because ordinarily limestone is not so porous, but this weathering might bring about unit porosity where you have water passing freely. Now, the types of porosity, we have primary porosity. Now, this is the inherent character of the soil or a rock. It is sync depositional, meaning this primary porosity is formed at the point of formation of the material. Secondary porosity, on the other hand, develops after deposition, due to physical and chemical weathering. It could be weathering, it could be some tectonic activities, maybe fracturing and the likes. So this brings about secondary porosity. As you can see here, you have fractures in the rock material, which is originally solid, impermeable, but due to some regional tectonic activities, you have fracturing, thus increasing the porosity of the material of the rock. Now, also, in terms of the interconnectivity between these pore spaces, we have total porosity and effective porosity. And total porosity refers to the entirety, the total space, the entire pore space in a rock. Effective porosity, on the other hand, is the interconnected pore, the interconnected pores, that allows the passage of fluids. When you come here, you see that this material is actually quite porous. You can see space, but these spaces aren't interconnected, right? You can't have fluids moving from here to here because they are blocked off. But in this case, the pore spaces are interconnected, so you can actually have material or fluids moving in between pores. Now, effective porosity is actually less than total porosity because it is the interconnected pores, and total porosity is everything, the entire pore space in the material. Now, the term effective porosity actually leads us to another important characteristic of good water bearing rocks. Talk about permeability, which is a measure of the ease of movement of water through a porous medium. So permeability and effective porosity actually work hand in hand. So the easier it is for water to move between rock materials, between these soil particles, the more permeable you say the material is. As you can see in this case, this is actually very permeable. You can have your water, your oil, gas moving freely in between the soil materials here. But in this case, it's not so permeable. You see blockages and all that. And this isn't even porous. Talk more of being permeable. Now, why is sand the preferred reservoir when clay in most cases is more porous? In most cases, clay is actually more porous than sand, and this is actually going to throw more light on how permeability and porosity affects the water-bearing characteristics of a particular rock. Now, when you look at clay silts, they tend to have platy particles. Now, these platy particles aren't really they don't have spaces between them that are interconnected. In clay, in mudstone, you can have porosity of about 50%. So meaning, you can have void spaces, of about 50% of the whole rock. But they are not interconnected. These porosities are not interconnected. So it is not permeable. You can't have water flowing freely. But in the case of sandstone, you can have porosity as low as 25%, which isn't actually low, but compared to the clay, it is low. So you can have 25%, but these pore spaces are actually more connected. The interconnectivity is higher. So sand is the better reservoir. Even in oil and gas, it's better reservoir rock. And then if you intend to get oil from shale, you have to do what we call fracturing, creating pore spaces, secondary pore spaces, but in this case, due to anthropogenic activities, non-natural activities. Now, when you intend to actually mine water, get water from underground, you're looking for what we call an aquifer. An aquifer is a geologically deposited material that is both porous and permeable. So meaning it's saturated with water, it's capable of holding that water and capable of transmitting said water at sufficient rate. Other terms that might interest you are aquiclude and aquitard, also capable of holding water, but they do not transmit said water. Types of aquifer. Now, the two main types of aquifer that we have are confined aquifer and unconfined aquifer. An unconfined aquifer has no layer of clay. There's no aquitard or aquiclude above it. All you have is the water table, then the zone of aeration, then you have the surface of the earth. So there is no confining layer on top, but of course you have to have that restricting layer of impermeable clay, rock, or whatever underneath to stop further infiltration of water. Confined aquifer, on the other hand, is sandwiched between two impermeable layers. As we have here, this is a confined aquifer. You have your bedrock here, which is an impermeable layer. Then you have this confining layer above it. So this is a confined aquifer sandwiched in between these two impermeable layers. Now you might ask me, how does the water get there if this layer is actually, confined from the surface? How is it being recharged? Now, in most cases, the water is the recharge zone can actually be somewhere else, can have the recharge zone further down or somewhere else, or the water can be fossil water, meaning that the water was deposited at the point of creation, at the point of deposition of that particular rock unit. So those are the two ways in which water can find its way into a confined aquifer. Now, of course, looking for a water source, you would prefer the one with a recharge zone, because when you have a confined aquifer with fossil water, then you're actually taking water from a source that is most definitely going to get depleted at some point, because there is no recharge zone. You don't have a zone where the water is refilling the aquifer. Now, another type of aquifer is the perched aquifer. It's quite different from the confined and unconfined, where you can have a lens, some sort of lens of impermeable material, say, for example, clay. In permeable material, this could be sandstone. So when water infiltrates, it actually goes down into the main saturated zone. But when the water comes through here, you see that it is trapped by this impermeable layer, thus forming a perched water table here. Now, if you drill your borehole into this, you first of all hit this perched aquifer. And then you might think, oh, yeah, I found water, so there's no need to go deeper, and then you pull back. This is why good geophysical survey is actually important before drilling for water, so you can get the different geoelectric layers, and then you properly plan your drilling, because this in some cases might not give you long-lasting access to water. The water might finish, and then you'll be wondering what happened. It is because you hit the perched aquifer, not the main aquifer. Now, what is the relationship between the geology of an area and its groundwater potential? Now, what is considered a good aquifer is actually dependent on the geology of an area. Say I'm in an area where the two main lithology I have a basement and then shale. Now, in an ideal scenario, the both are not good water reservoirs. Shale isn't so permeable, and well, basement rocks are, I wouldn't want to say completely impermeable, but of course they are worse than shale. But then in that situation, you would consider the shale as, the best aquifer per se. So the geology of an area actually affects what is considered a good aquifer. Now, looking at the geology of the Niger Delta Basin, which is one of the coastal basins in Nigeria, actually made up of three main formations. You have the Akata Formation, which consists mainly of the marine shale. You have the Agbada Formation, where you have alternation of this marine shale and continental sandstone. So you can see some sort of transition from the marine environment to the paralic transitional environment, and then the continental environment, which is in the uppermost Benin Formation, containing continental alluvial sand. Now, if you're looking for an aquifer in this area, for example, you drill into the Benin Formation. I mean, that is what you're looking for. That is the major aquiferous zone in the Niger Delta. So say, for example, you're located somewhere here where you don't have access to the Benin Formation, you're drilling into the Agbada Formation, which is an alternation of sand and shale, or sand and clay materials. Of course, you can still find aquifers here, but not as sufficient as you find in the Benin Formation. So the geology of an area actually plays a crucial role in the occurrence of water in an area. Now, what is responsible for the water supply issues in Africa? Factors responsible for water supply issues in Africa includes inadequate investment in groundwater exploitation. Now, I'm not saying investments haven't been made towards groundwater exploration and exploitation in Africa, in Nigeria. I mean, UNICEF, the World Bank, a few other international organizations, UN, a few countries have actually invested. China invested in, groundwater exploration and exploitation, particularly in Nigeria. But in most cases, these investigations are done poorly, and that's it. So you have a lot of abortive boreholes, mostly in the north, where they just drill, heat water, and then they pull out without considering if the water will last or not. So the towns and the different villages, because these water problems in most cases is actually in rural areas where, these people don't have the funds or the money to actually do proper geophysical surveys for themselves and bring in a proper drilling crew to get the water out for them. So you need adequate investment in groundwater exploitation, and then proper supervision to ensure that it is done correctly and a long-lasting aquifers actually found, so that these communities can benefit and get access to potable water for a long period of time. We also have poor groundwater management and sustainability culture. I mean, out of sight, out of mind, right? We are not saying it, so whatever happens to it is not our business. So you have people abstracting water, wasting water. I mean, you will say you can't really waste water because it evaporates and goes back into the water system. But considering the water system of that particular area, the local hydrogeology, that water is actually going. And then if you're abstracting water at a faster rate than it is being recharged, then you might come across what is called, a water shock, where you can only take out as much as being recharged every year. And in some cases, that is like 10% or about 1% of what you were taking out before. So proper management needs to be established, and we actually have to look towards sustainability, because the future generation is there. We are not the only ones that need water. So we actually have to, manage these water resources and have the future at the back of our mind. Now, we also have complex and diverse geology. I mean, Nigeria is an example of this. We have about 7 sedimentary basins and the basement complex. So different regions, different areas, different states have different geology. So you need to properly understand the aquifer, the characteristics of the aquifer in the region you are concerned with, wherever you are, in order to, get the best out for the people. So the complex and diverse geology actually also contributes to this issue, which is why we need more funding. More studies need to be carried out on the different water systems, so that you have these small towns, these villages, you give them access to potable water. Now, these factors results in a number of problems, including pollution, right? I mean, since we don't have good water management systems, we don't have the sustainability culture, you can, build industries wherever you want without considering the water system. You don't know the location of aquifers in the area and all that. You can have, salts on the road, factories, pollutants coming from factories being washed and infiltrates into the ground, goes into the water system and actually pollutes this water system. And at the end of the day, you have the towns surrounding that area, making use of this water. So this can all be resolved through proper studies, and then the government actually has to come in to protect these areas. For example, now when you look at the Edwards Aquifer in the United States, I think in Texas, it is in Texas. Now this is a confined aquifer that actually provides water to about 3 million people, and it spans across a number of countries. Now this aquifer has a recharge zone, and this recharge zone was it was identified, and then when you are entering, you actually get signs like this that inform you that you are entering the Edwards Aquifer recharge zone, telling you that it is an environmentally sensitive area, and then you shouldn't dump there. You definitely can go and build a factory or an industry that might actually pollute this water source, because actually water source that provides water to a large number of people. So you can't go and build industries there, or you can't go and farm and use chemicals, fertilizers, which might actually pollute this water. So this is actually what we need in Nigeria, and I believe proper knowledge of water systems across the country is actually going to enable us to do this. So you need to provide the government with the various locations of major aquifers, and then they locate the recharge zones and make sure that these areas are designated as environmentally sensitive areas, and they make sure they protect these areas, and then make sure they stop companies from establishing industries, and they stop farming in such areas, not to pollute these water sources. Now, we also have a problem with sustainability, right? Excessive abstraction. So, as I said earlier, is as you keep, bringing out this water, if you are taking more than its recharge capacity, you might actually hit what we call water shock, where you can only take as much as is being recharged every year. And this might bring about what we call water refugees, right? This happened in Iraq recently, where you have, say, for example, you are in a town, and your town is dependent on a particular aquifer. That's where your home, your factories, businesses, and the likes, agricultural activities, that's where you get your water from. And then all of a sudden, in a couple of weeks, this water source actually dries up. Now, what do? That is the main water source of your town. So definitely you've been displaced. You are now a water refugee, so you have to locate the nearest town where you can get access to water. If the government doesn't come to your rescue, and I mean, what are they going to do? Well, maybe you could actually pipe water from near towns into the village or the town, but well, you've been greatly inconvenienced because now you don't have access to your water source. We also have the problem of saltwater intrusion. This is peculiar to coastal regions, like in Lagos, for example, one of the biggest cities in Africa. Freshwater is actually less dense than saltwater. So as you move towards the ocean, you can have this lens of fresh water actually sitting on salt water. And then as you are, you're bringing out water, you are abstracting water from these wells. We have what we call, the cone of depression, where the fresh water actually draws back, it draws down, so to speak, draws down. As it draws down, the salt water actually, forms an exaggerated mirror image of the fresh water. So as this is drawing down, the salt water is drawing up, and it might get to a point where you're actually pumping out this salt water. So this problem is seen a lot in Lagos, and you have a lot of houses in Lagos where they don't have access to fresh water. So it's because of this over abstraction leading to salt water intrusion. You also have the problem of land subsidence. As you are taking out this water, this water might actually be sharing the pressure from the surface with the soil particles. So as we have in this case, this is a clay. You have clay in this region. So as you are pumping out water, you're abstracting water, you're actually creating space in between this soil particles that was originally occupied by water, and the water was actually sharing the pressure from the surface, thus keeping the land balanced and at equilibrium. But as you're pumping out this water, the pressure from the surface actually causes compaction, causes the particles to close up that space left by the water that you have pumped out. So this might lead to what we call subsidence, right? Land subsidence. You see that it's originally used to be like this, but due to pumping in this area, you have subsidence, and this could actually cause major destruction, because this subsidence is not uniform. And when you have bridges, you have houses in such areas, it will lead to a situation like this. I think this happened in 2021. on 1st, was it November or so? I got this from the Guardian newspaper in Nigeria, where it's a one-story building actually collapsed in Lagos. You can see clearly in this picture, you know, a lot of people were trapped in the building, and a few workers actually died. So it is because of these groundwater problems, and subsidence is actually one of the suspected causes of this collapse. So areas like this are actually experiencing a lot as a result of improper management of groundwater and poor groundwater legislation and all that. So a lot actually has to be done as regards groundwater in developing countries. And groundwater is currently the most important source of fresh water. There's no doubt it is the major source of fresh water we've got, and we have to properly protect it. We have to properly leverage it, and we have to be sustainable because it is what we've got. Except if we're looking towards, you know, glaciers, or looking towards making desalinated saline or ocean water our major water source in the future. Groundwater is what we've got. So we have to manage it. We need proper administration of groundwater resources in developing countries. The government has to come into play because there isn't much individuals can do. I am currently working on studying the hydrogeology of a particular town in Kogi State, Nigeria. Looking towards studying the location of the various main aquifers, and then looking at the quality of the groundwater there as well. So at least this gives the people of the town knowledge on what they actually have, and then they know how to establish their industries, they know where to establish their farmlands and all that. So this is actually what we need done in most part of the country, especially in the rural areas, so that, you know, these people in villages can actually have access to fresh water. All right. So thank you very much for listening to the presentation, and I hope you're having a nice day.